afternoon. Excuse me, my name is Amanda Rivera. I'm the hearing examiner presiding over today's case. The date is October 5th, 2023, and this is case SEZ2022-00016 and VAR2022-00012. It is a combined request for a special exception and a variance in the Lehigh Acres planning community for a wireless communication facility. Because it is a quasi-judicial hearing, all evidence and testimony must be taken under oath. So if you intend to speak, if you could please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide is the truth?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you. And do we have a member of the public here today, sir? Okay, welcome. I'll just go over briefly. First, we're going to hear from the applicant. They're going to present their request in the case and call any witnesses that they may have to support that request. Following their presentation, we'll turn to the county staff. He'll go over his review of the case and his recommendation, which is of approval with conditions in this case. After that, we'll come back to the applicant and the staff to provide any rebuttal if there's any public comment that you wanted to provide whenever we open that portion. Otherwise, they'll provide their closing remarks and address any questions that come up during the presentation. With that, we can begin with the applicant whenever you're ready. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking the time to come here for the hearing. Adam put in a lot of work, a lot of questions that I had, and he's always very great about answering them. And I want to thank Chief DeLallo for coming to show his support for the tower. And we actually have a couple other coming, but this is the one we're here to talk about today. And Patrick Keene has been an RF engineer with just about every cellular company you could name, with all the different mergers and everything else. So he'll be our RF expert.
Thank you.
We are applying for a tower at the Lehigh Acres Fire Station 103 site. This is an area that's been looked at for a long time to try and improve communications in the area. There are currently no existing structures around. There are not any big condos or existing towers or anything of that nature that allows us to cover the area. So we're looking to build a 149-foot monopole tower in order to increase the fire station's communications. We're reserving a spot on the tower for the fire station for their antenna, as well as all wireless carriers will be able to co-locate on here. And as I roll along, please ask any questions, anything that I'm happy to answer as we go. Don't have to wait till the end. All the slides won't have a million lines like this, but just to get it out there, what we're applying for. We're applying for a 149-foot communications tower at the fire station. This is a critical communications site. This is something that will provide cell phone, wireless communications, both voice and data for the entire area. So we're looking at with this one tower being able to cover thousands of people, both who live in the neighborhood, drive through the area, and it will also, as I'll show you in future slides, it will enhance existing towers. So when you build a tower, it takes a lot of the heavy lifting off of the existing towers so that they can be repositioned to focus on the area that they're in. We looked around and there are no other properties that fit as well as Fire Station 103. When you combine the location with the fact that it is already an emergency services station so that the fire department can use it as well for their own communications. And even though most of these facilities are unmanned, it's nice when one is basically manned. So when something comes along, if we have a horrible hurricane comes through or something of that nature, it's at an emergency facility. So if anything's happening to the tower, we'll be able to get out there and we'll find out that, hey, an antenna's been hit or trees fell down, something of that nature, and we can quickly get it back on the air. This is what we're trying to do. The top button, you said?
Yeah,
Red?
yeah, for the red.
Ah, there we go. What we're trying to do is, this is how it currently stands. This is the coverage. This is the fire station right here, and this pole, this flag pole, is currently stretched to try and cover the area. What we're trying to do is alleviate the fact that it's trying to stretch and cover the area, and then it's leaving all these areas open. With the construction of this tower, as you can see, we can now blanket the area. And then these other sites that T-Mobile is currently on, as well as other carriers, can now concentrate on the areas that they were meant to cover and not have to stretch to cover this area. So a quick anecdote is when I was there posting the signs that say there's a hearing coming up in the neighborhood, I'm out there putting them up, and I don't know if you remember, it was the 19th. It was a horrible storm came through, and I was sitting at the fire station looking at the map that shows the radar of the storms coming, and I looked at it and I couldn't get service. Could not get service sitting right at the station. So it started to loud up, and I thought, okay, I can make it back across Alligator Alley. I live over on the East Coast in Boca. And so I started rolling along, and everything was fine. And then halfway across, I hit a crazy typhoon where I'm going 15 to 20 miles an hour, staring at the headlight or the taillights in front of me. People are pulling over. It's chaos. And it would have been great if I would have had service, would have seen the storm, could have parked at a Cracker Barrel, had a coffee, had dinner, and then just a half an hour later would have been a nice, safe drive home. So you take for granted not just the emergency communications of being able to pick up your phone, but even things like app and data and things of that nature are critical that people rely on. So this is the goal. In order to cover this area, alleviate the stress on these towers so that we can now have this whole neighborhood covered. Here are the existing towers that are up here. These are all, you'll notice, along Lee Boulevard. Often you'll find that the main thoroughfares are covered first because that's where a lot of the traffic is, and then you start to try and spend more money to cover neighborhoods, and that's what we have here. So this is the tower we're applying for. We're trying to cover this big area down in here. There's some more towers to the south that broadcast north to try and cover this area, and this will be a great fit again to alleviate the traffic up here and to cover this whole neighborhood. This is a tower that is in the works. We've applied for it. We're working our way through acceptance and completion. But the idea is we're really taking a good look at building out a network, just not onesies, twosies, here or there. We're really trying to see what's the best way to space out these towers and build out a network so we can cover this huge area that's seeing a big boom in population. A lot of people moving in, people need their cell phones to work, and so that's what the network engineers do is they take a look, they see who's coming, they see what's going on, and build out and plan for it. What we were looking at, the unique hardship part, is that this strip right here between Gunnery Road and Gretchen, that's the area that is the C2 business district, the commercial district right here that allows the towers. Everything else we've got, you can just see it's neighborhoods all around. So we're confined to those strip of properties that are right along Gunnery Road between Gretchen, and everything there, the problem is you just can't meet setbacks because even if you pick a spot, a bigger parcel, you can see there's just no way to meet the setbacks where it's the height of the tower. And so what we're requesting is a variance from the setback requirement, and we're going to mitigate that by engineering the tower so it doesn't bend or break. It just bends, doesn't break. We're also looking at a variance on landscaping so that there's one side of it where there just isn't any room on the landscaping. So we're going to have to put in a decorative fence there instead of the landscaping, again, to get to the same point of blocking view of the equipment compound. There's also a situation in Lehigh Acres where all the properties have this 6-foot platted utility easement all around. And we can't use that for landscaping, and this property is the same. The area where we would be able to build, we're not able to use that for landscaping because it's part of that utility easement. So that's where the wall will come in. This, again, don't have to read through it. I'm sure you know the lead plan very well, but just wanted to touch on the fact that we are working to meet the criteria. We're building a critical utility. We're not just building something for our own fun. This is something that the area neighborhood really gets a big benefit out of. The fire station gets a benefit out of. Not only is it going to be made so that the fire department can use it for their own equipment, but everybody in the fire department has their own cell phone. So whether you're on the radios or a cell phone, it's a critical communication facility that we're looking to build right there at the fire station. And it is designed to minimize the impact. There are a lot of different towers, a lot of different designs. I'm sure you've seen the ones that are self-supports that look like an oil rig. You've seen ones that are guy wire. You've even seen other types of stealth towers. This one minimizes the design. It's basically a pole with some antennas on it. It's a single pole. We've kept it to the height that's allowed. We are not asking for any increase in height, so we've kept it to the height that's allowed as a single monopole. With panel antennas, which again is higher on the hierarchy. The policies, the critical policies of preserving nature preserves and endangered species, we do a full NEPA. We looked at the wood storks, bald eagles, every endangered species, environmental, everything. We've already gone through all that, and it was found that there are no adverse effects of this tower being constructed. This gives you a little better idea. Here you can see, here's the station. Property lines are where the nice mowed grass is. And basically, we're going to be building it here on the southern side, right on the edge of this scrapyard. And this is the side where we're asking for the variance and landscaping. You can see it's very tight. We've also got that 6-foot utility easement to contend with. So that's why we're not able to put any landscaping around here. The rest of it, this side will be landscaped, this side will be all landscaped. But we just are going to be putting in, asking to put in a decorative fence here instead of the landscaping. It also gives you an idea of the setback issue between these two streets, which we'll see here in another slide. This is the design. You can see this is the fire station. We're along this south side. This is the spacing. We're not even building in that 6-foot utility easement because it's just basically unusable at this point. This is the type of cell tower. We're going to make a cell tower, build a cell tower so that it's able to handle at least 4 major carriers. So all the 4 major carriers will go on there. There might be some smaller internet service providers that like to provide a service for the neighborhood, but it'll be engineered so that it can handle all 4 major carriers for co-location so that you don't get another hearing where somebody's asking for a tower a few feet down the road. This shows obviously we have to apply for a special exception, and we're applying for, within the height requirement, 149 feet, and that's what we're applying for. We're not asking for any additional height. Going to get it done at 149. Here's the landscaping variance request. As I've mentioned, it's this southern wall along here. As I said, we're putting in trees and hedges along the west side, double hedge along the east side. It's just this southern side that overlooks the scrapyard where we're asking for our variance relief. And this gives you an idea. This is looking right at the southern side. This is the current existing chain link fence with the barbed wire on the top. This is the existing fence. What we're asking for is, instead of this fence, to replace it with a taller 8-foot opaque fence like this. And I think it kind of would give both properties relief. The fire department doesn't have to stare at the scrapyard, and then the scrapyard doesn't have to see any of the equipment behind the wall. This is a rendering that we did. This again shows you the existing fence we're talking about, and you can just see how tight it is where we're trying to put in the communication facility. So this is where the decorative wall will go, and where you see these little shrubs here, we're going to be, okay, I didn't follow where this little square is going to be, but okay. You can see on the handout, we did a rendering just to show we're going to have trees and bushes and everything so that you won't be able to see through this fence.
And just in terms of locating it relative to the site plan, I think the pole is actually going to line up somewhat with the, what looks to be the bay of the doors in the front. Does that sound correct to you?
Oh, you mean
Where the
laterally? That is actually where this is.
It's just
saying. So you're saying, right, this is where
yes.
the tower is, right here.
Right, so that aligns essentially with
right.
the front view that you were just showing. It would be where the bay doors are, more or
right,
less.
The doors are right here, correct.
Okay.
Doors are right here, and then you come due south, and that's where the center of the tower is, right here. Setback. Setback is the other variance we're requesting, and as I'd mentioned, it's impossible to meet the setback, the height of the tower for this parcel here, especially with the parcel being developed with the fire station on it. You know, any parcel, even an empty parcel, we wouldn't be able to meet the setback if we stuck it right in the middle of the parcel. And the way we're approaching that is that zero fall zone idea, where you've probably heard about breakpoint technology, where the top 50 feet, you know, a tower doesn't snap off at the base and fall for its full height. It's designed to snap off where the antennas are. It's engineered that way. This one is going another step, in that it's designed to not snap at all, to just bend. So it's designed to withstand a hurricane. We don't want it to be damaged, but there are a few monster hurricanes that have come through here lately. So we're very aware of that, and we're designing it so that if a catastrophic hurricane comes through, it most likely will probably be the last thing standing as a steel pole, and then it'll be bent. And then we can come out, fix it, replace it, get it back on air. The carriers are very good about, in any emergency, dispatching crews to get out and get these sites back on air. And that's the nice thing about having these multiple towers, is that just as I showed that one tower stretching in to cover an area, when you get these cells, and that's why they're called cell phones, cell towers, when you get these cells back on air, one tower can kind of help make up for another tower that's down until it comes back up on the air, and you then have full service.
On that point, I did have a question on that no-fall letter that was attached here. It said that it would lean over and remain in a permanently deformed condition, but I assume that the intention is you would replace it. It's not going to
Right.
permanently actually lean. The idea is just it's never going to actually break.
Just kind of bent. And that's the equivalent of, hey, the tower's down. So then we come out and replace the tower and get it back on the air.
Does the
But
matter of co-locations affect that at all if all 4 antenna are occupied, or are all 4 of those installed and then you provide a service provider to those later?
we engineer it in the beginning with the idea that it's fully loaded.
Okay.
So it's fully loaded with all 4 carriers on there. Even though it doesn't start out that way, it's going to start off with 1, and then a little later, get our 2nd and 3rd. And from the beginning, the tower is engineered for all 4.
Thank you.
And this gives you the idea. This blue ring, this is the full height of the tower. And again, even if we're in the middle of the property here, we still wouldn't be able to meet the criteria of the full height of the tower, which is 149 feet, staying within the parcel. So what we're doing is, again, over-engineering it so we hit this green radius, so that, again, we've got 16 feet worth of bend, which, that's a broken tower, but it stays within the parcel. And again, like you're saying, we'd be replacing the tower, but again, it hasn't gone anywhere, and that's the idea. The big idea is to engineer it so that it doesn't bend. It's going to be ready to withstand 180 and above mile-per-hour winds. But again, if a monster comes through, which if we made it through another season here, things are cooling off, so hopefully that won't happen. These are a few renderings to give you an idea. Again, it's a glorified light pole. It's a monopole tower. It's not one of those oil rigs or anything like that. There are no guy wires off of this tower. This is the tower with the 1 carrier on it with the panel antennas. This is right up against the station from the front, Gunnery Road. I like kind of giving the idea that this is only 0.15 miles away up on Gunnery Road. You're heading south on Gunnery Road coming in from the north. And you can see it already starts to become, a non-event having a tower up there, and there are a lot of other utilities in the area that actually are a little bigger in your windshield. This is taken the street that's right off of Gunnery Road, and again you can see the tower right here, the rendering of it. A nice thing about a wireless tower is that it covers thousands of people in the whole area and people coming through, and we don't have to have cables and wires and everything through everyone's backyard. So even though they're necessary, you got to power your house. You might have a swimming pool that's got all these cables and everything going through your backyard. Nice thing about a cell tower is we build this one tower and everybody in the area gets service. And a lot of homes now only have a cell phone. I've only had a cell phone for about 20 years, and so a lot of other people might even have a landline but never use it and have their cell phone. You're sitting on the couch, you're always grabbing the cell phone. And in an emergency, I've had to do this as well, where somebody in the family's having an emergency, you grab your cell phone and dial 911 to make sure you're getting a hold of somebody. And so you don't want to have to go to that one room in the house that gets service. Another thing about having this new tower is that it helps with in-building coverage. So you might be driving along and have service, and then you say, hey, I'm pulling into my neighborhood, I'm going into the house, I'll call you back, because you know you're going to drop. So this really helps with that in-building service so that from anywhere in the house, you're going to have your phone service. This is as you're heading north. On the other side, heading north up Gunnery, heading towards the fire station. Here's the tower right there. And these were checked with the balloon test. We did the full balloon test to make sure that the renderings are at the correct height, and they did check out. Actually, the renderings ended up being a little taller than the balloon, but it might be a wind issue. As I said, Patrick Keene is here. He actually created the RF documents that we were going through and the one that was submitted. And so he's here to answer any questions. And you can see he's got over 26 years in the industry. As I said, he's worked for about every major carrier you can name. And the one I like is right here. You've worked with the shipboard missile defense system. That one I want to hear some more about. But
Can neither confirm nor deny.
right, exactly. So anyway, if you want to get into the weeds of any of those maps or any questions like that, I wanted to make sure I had an expert here. And again, Chief DiLallo is here to support the idea that communications is a critical part, and that it's something that we've talked about for a while, of trying to boost up service at this fire station as well as a couple more that we're looking at. And again, just a little preview. This is the one we're talking about today, and just to show you that we are looking at building out a whole network. This is Fire Station 104 that we're currently in the mix of trying to get the application complete. And so we're looking to really cover this whole area, and this fire station, this tower pairs up nicely with this tower to cover the entire neighborhood.
And on those maps, is the green indicating only T-Mobile customers, or is that all mobile?
This green is T-Mobile, but there aren't any other structures in here, and so this tower here, I've already been told that Verizon wants on the tower. T-Mobile, this is a T-Mobile site as well, and Verizon's already said we want on that tower as well. No offense, but I do have Verizon service. Patrick's worked for T-Mobile last, but I have Verizon service. And at this station at 103 is the one I couldn't even pull up a map. I had no service. So it's a matter of, typically the way it goes is we're asked by a particular company to say, hey, we have a deficiency. Can you find a spot to build a tower for our network? I go out and I do it and go through the process of building the tower. And then other carriers come along and say, there's a solution. And then they come on to apply to go on the tower.
So their maps they should look similar to what this is. Essentially, like the user base is spread out across all the various providers. And
Right.
they'll come along after you construct.
Right, and with this one, since Verizon has already applied to go on the tower, we've supplied their map as well. And it shows the same pattern that T-Mobile has of trying to cover this area.
One of the questions I had, and I do want to thank you both, staff and applicant, because we've had a number of these cases, and as you know, there's a lot of detailed findings we have to have, and I've never had it set out so succinctly, so thank you for that, whoever prepared this document. But one of the things that was said in the narrative that I had a question on, it said that as demand increases, the coverage area decreases. So is that just, so it's not a geographic search area that we're looking at whenever, that's a question I have in every single one of these cases, because that's not a defined term, what the geographic search area is.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious about that, because it's not a lineal distance. It seems to be, is it number of users that are accessing that facility?
It's a little of both. There are two different types of search rings, they're called, two different types of reasons that a carrier is looking for an area. One is strictly coverage. Like, we got nothing there, so it's a big, long, empty highway or something, or just there's no coverage in that area. So they'll say, all right, we need a tower for that coverage. The other one is capacity. So whereas maybe one tower could have covered this area back in 1985, everybody's moved in, and now you've got all these people demanding coverage. And so I always use the analogy of like a sprinkler. So you might have a sprinkler head that can handle a small area around it, and can even stretch out if it's got a grassy area around it. But as hedges and flowers and more plants start popping up, it draws off of that tower, and that one little sprinkler head can no longer cover it. And so that's why, even especially with 5G, a tower that used to cover an area, its area that it can now cover shrinks, because it has so much more demand pulling off of that tower. And so you'll find a tower that an area might shrink, whereas, say if the area that this tower covered maybe encompassed this whole circle, but as that shrinks, that's when dead zones start to pop up. So you'll have two towers that met in the middle and covered everything, but as the area they can cover shrinks up because of the population, because of all the demands on it. Whereas before it was just voice. Now it's voice and data. Now it's voice and data, and people have video conference. It's a lot of stuff going on. People working from home, people doing that kind of thing. Everything is wireless. It shrinks up that area, so now in the middle you have a dead zone again. And that's why you say, okay, we need something in here to now cover this area.
And my question, it's not relative to this case specifically, but we do have that concern about a proliferation of towers in any particular area. And so I'm just wondering if the technology is increasing so that you can accommodate more users than you traditionally did with the new technologies that are coming along, or if we're just going to see a lot more towers because of demand.
Yeah, no, I think it's a battle. They're both going on. So you've got more people and more people and more people, and then you have technology catching up with, one antenna. And again, this is where I get into the weeds, and glad Patrick's here. One antenna can handle more and more and more and more people. And so that's why you end up with, a little cell phone like this that can go for miles and the battery lasts most of the day unless you're really burning it up, as opposed to back in the day when you had a brick phone and, again, it only worked so good in so many spaces, and it was going to a tower that might be 5 miles, 7 miles away. It's very different in that the antennas now can handle a lot more traffic, so you can have a lot smaller phone. That kind of thing. So it's both. Populations are booming. The amount of bandwidth that people require in order to power these phones is accelerating, and at the same time, technology is keeping up so that the towers are still going to be able to handle the amount of people and bandwidth that they need.
Thank you. That was the extent of my questions. Did staff have any questions?
Just a follow-up on it. It's piggybacking off your question, just to make sure I understand it. Maybe the RF engineer could explain the search ring, the actual shape of the search ring, which I could go back to. That shape right there, that's determined based on what factors? I know we talked about capacity and.
I've got actually a slide at the very end's got the same search ring in it.
Okay.
Do I need to?
Please.
Oh, there it was.
Patrick Keene, 1368 Northwest 86 Way, Coral Springs, Florida. I have been sworn in. Thank you for your time today. Regarding the search ring, can you?
The geometry of the search ring, the actual shape, what contours those lines and creates that search ring that you guys create for any given carrier?
The search ring itself is how do you come up with the search ring is based on a few things. The signal level, as Mr. Hahn suggested, there's different types of search rings. There's a coverage, which is related to the signal level. So it may be my signal level is low in an approximate area in that size. Or Mr. Hahn also talked about a capacity gap or a service gap. So as more people come in there on a tower and are being used on a tower, they're using the services, which are high-speed data, and that opens a service gap nearby. So that polygon sometimes is determined by, we know that gap opens up at 5 o'clock on Fridays. So that's another way we come up with a polygon. Now this polygon in particular was made in 2019, so it's not necessarily applicable today, but in general it is.
That answers my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That was the extent of my questions for now.
Okay.
Of course, we'll come back at the end. As I said, it was very thorough, so I appreciate that. I feel very well prepared for today. I just had the follow-up questions, and then we'll listen to what staff has to say and come back to the applicant at the end, unless you had more of the primary presentation.
Nope, that was our presentation. Basically, there's a great need there, and we're trying to meet it, and this we really believe is the best spot to meet it, and we love the fact being able to pair up with an emergency facility to actually, build an emergency communication tower. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
And I should have asked, did you have a PowerPoint presentation copy that
I do.
could accept? And I'll take that into the record as applicant Exhibit 1. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Adam Mendez, Senior Planner at the Zoning Section. I also have staff's PowerPoint I'll approach with.
Thank you very much. And that will be Staff Exhibit 2, because Staff Exhibit 1 is the staff report. I'll take both of those. Thank you.
Here's the copy.
The staff.
Yeah, I can do those.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Madam Hearing Examiner, the case before you, I think Michael Hans addressed the need, the desire, the rationale for this facility on a technical level beyond what maybe you saw in the staff report. The staff report, and I'll go through the slides in order, it started out with the basic land development entitlements, kind of honing in from there. So we are in the Central Urban Future Land Use category over on the west side of Gunnery Road South. The east side, where the residential single-family zoning begins, is in the urban community future land use. The property's zoned commercial C2. You see it's about a 170-foot deep strip, and that's consistent from north to south, almost all the way to 82. On the west side, you have the greater RM2 zoning, some duplex development, and on the east side, the RS1 in line with the single-family residential development east of Gunnery Road South. Projects also in the mixed-use overlay, which pairs up well with the Lehigh Acres community plan overlay. Wherever there's a commercial overlay, typically you'll also find the mixed-use overlay. This is the Lehigh Acres community overlay in the county's geographic information system, GIS. You can turn on that layer for the benefit of being able to really zoom in and figure out where where that delineation is. And you can see that commercial overlay is in line with the mixed use overlay. So those are all the competing attributes, or not competing, but the existing attributes in the property. The search ring is located, as you've heard before you, it's located, they're trying to find a tower within this area. The land development code's regulations are aimed to site this tower outside of the residential areas if possible, based on hierarchy. And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to grab some notes I have to guide me here. I had a couple comments on some of the two nearest towers that we have here. I mentioned one of them in the staff report, and that's the Flagpole Tower. That is a stealth facility between 2003 and 2011, when the communication facilities regulations were revamped. We had a brief period of time where we could propose towers at a height of 149 feet without a full tower setback or a half height setback, depending on where the tower antennas were. The other pole here is also a stealth facility at Varsity Lakes Middle School. It was approved in 2007, again between that window of time. It was also a stealth tower. And I think that tower was to resemble a athletic field light pole. So these towers, as you see in Lehigh Acres, and understanding the context of the inadequacies of large tracts of suitable commercial lands, they really benefited in that time frame from having these towers that they could site without a full height setback. As you can see here, and it's a little bit further out of the video screen here, the difference in service here. In Michael Hahn's presentation, you could see that, I think it was cut off about here, but you can see really the gap here and the poor service that's existing on the east side, as well as covering some of Westminster's residential and golf course community. So here we have some side-by-sides with the balloon test and the tower. As you see, as you heard from him, the superimposed tower may be actually a little larger than what it actually will be functionally, depending on how the wind was that day. He's went into detail about what it's going to look like, and as an estimate from different vantage points from interior to the neighborhood or along the Gunnery Road South corridor. When we talk about the surrounding area, I talked about it just in the zoning maps, which just show a radius of maybe about 2,000 feet, but here's really a radius of about 1.5 miles. So you have this sea of residential. The tower is guided to this area, and so we're here before you to try to get a tower in this commercial area with either full height or half height setbacks. In this case, we're looking for the antennas on the outside of the tower. Looks like we might have some people joining in here shortly. This is an aerial view of the surrounding area from a south to north orientation. You can see the fire station here with the double driveway. You can see the commercial and some of the vacant commercial tracts, as well as the interspersed residential duplex development, single family development on either side of Gunnery Road. The staff recommendation is approval with conditions. It's based on the case of the variance criteria, the special exception criteria, and the state statute and how that kind of intermingles with the decision-making criteria. When it comes to extrapolating variance review criteria, especially with towers on constrained properties, the elephant in the room is generally the relationship between the hardship and what is the minimum relief necessary to get yourself over that hardship. Why a tower isn't located at the center of the property, why a compound isn't built on top of a building or within a building, why other vacant commercial tracts are passed up, which might minimize the level of variance. All those come into discussion. I believe that the reference state statute here, 365.172, really covers that, has influence on the Land Development Code supplemental special findings. Those were enacted in 2003 when this state statute, I believe the state statute really started coming to life in 1998, but it was amended most impactfully in 2003, and it's been relatively the same since then. And at that time, the Land Development Code was amended to incorporate these special findings, both in the special exception and variance fold. And so I believe that when you consider that state statute and its influence on the LDC findings, whether denial will constitute the prohibition of wireless services in an area. In this case, you have evidence here from an RF engineer report that there is poor service. So I'd say that would constitute lack of service in this case. But it helps with circumventing those tit for tat arguments on where is the minimum setback and where is the hardship. So we limit this decision in this case to the distance or setback necessary to mitigate any structural safety concerns or aesthetic concerns. And so with that, I'll go to my next page. With the surrounding area in mind, the Land Development Code preferences the siting of the tower in this area. With these limited commercial industrial areas in Lehigh Acres, often comprised of these shallow strips, we've been part of another tower recently where the same situation was relevant. The objective of the county's land development regulations is to prevent proliferation, but also to keep these outside of the less intense areas and closer to the more intense areas with the hierarchy. I think we can make the finding that this commercial area is ideal for the tower, and when we hone in on a site-specific level of detail to evaluate whether the location and design of the structure creates a structural safety or aesthetic concern, that's where we can make that finding that it's not expected to impact the residential areas, as these facilities are to occur here based on the pattern here and what has evolved here in Lehigh Acres. So it's expected that this facility and other non-residential facilities are going to occur intensely along this strip along the west side of Gunnery Road South and between Gretchen Avenue South and Gunnery Road South. The compound will be shielded by a continuous 8-foot high opaque fence with required planting material facing the residential land uses across Gretchen Avenue South. The tower is required to collapse within the leased area. They may over-engineer it to exceed those standards, but that's what the Land Development Code requires compliance with at time of local development order and building permit approval. So with evaluating these competing criteria, staff has found that recommendation of approval is appropriate with conditions. The first two conditions pertain to the location of the tower and the overall height, while conditions 3 and 4 pertain to the landscape plan, irrigation, and open space. Condition 5 pertains to the finish and color, which is typical of these types of facilities. And so with that, my presentation is concluded, so let me know if you have any questions.
The conditions seem very standard except number 4, and that came, I believe, from the environmental staff recommendation, and I wasn't clear if the current site already meets the open space and the landscape requirements, or if that was as a result of this specific request.
We actually do expect it to meet. We didn't get a full open space calc. There's an old LDO showing the open space of the property, but the evolving mixed-use overlay has cut the open space down significantly on this property. So it's very likely that they're going to be able to demonstrate open space compliance with taking this compound away from the obtainable open space on the property. So we believe so.
Okay, So there wasn't a concern where we're approving one thing over here, but causing them some heartache in another
Right.
area for them to have to come back and get a variance from some
Exactly.
other area.
We didn't want to see that happen, and I think the mixed-use overlay alleviates that concern for us. We didn't get anything specifically, but in evaluating both of them, it seemed like they would be well within the open space required.
Thank you.
You're
Did
welcome.
applicant have any questions of staff?
I don't have any questions. You know, the only one last comment I was going to make is that when we were talking about the types of towers, one nice thing about the monopole tower is it future-proofs it. So as antenna sizes and shapes and everything changes down the road, what's the technology going to look like 10 years from now? Again, the tower is designed to be able, you can put any kind of shape, size antenna on there. And so one issue that we do run into with some of those flagpoles or things of that nature is, one, you can only stick one antenna, so you don't get the desired coverage result. It's South Florida, as we all know, it gets a little hot here, so you got radios in there that cooks the radios so that you also don't get the coverage because the radios perform as well. And then size of antennas. Some of these 5G antennas are these big passive type of antennas, and they're as big as a surfboard, so you can't stuff them in there. So nice thing about the monopole is we're also future-proofing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now would be the public comment period, if you wanted to put any comments on the record today.
No, I really thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then with that, I have everything that I need. I again want to thank all of you for the extensive information that I received. As I said, as you've gone through this process too, this is one of the more arduous requests that we get because of the number of findings that have to be made. So I appreciate your diligence in going through those items one by one, because it made my review and preparation for today a lot easier. So thank you for that. The decision is final with my office, so when I release that, if you were here today, you'll get a copy of that if you wanted to fill out the form, sir, even though you didn't speak. Otherwise, everyone else will get a copy of that, and I appreciate your time and your attendance today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.